Thanks for tuning into the Sweet Sounds podcast. In this episode, we introduce two of our newest employees, Steven and Jeremy. These guys are both former music educators turned band repair technicians, and we discuss their career transitions, interesting school stories, why you should stay away from cheap band instruments, and Pokemon. Let's jump into it.
Okay. I'm Jen. I work here. Steven.
I'm Steven. I also work here.
And I'm Jeremy. I also work here.
Okay, so Steven has only been here for 3 months. Yes, and Jeremy's been here a year.
Yeah, as of, the 27th, so in a couple days from now.
Right. So we're very excited about that. Steven, let's start with you. Why don't you tell us about your musical journey?
Sure. So I started playing trombone in 7th grade or so, and it was just like my dad had a trombone, and I walked into the band director's office, and she was like, "Hey, can you go like?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And she was like, "All right, trombone," and that was it. So it was a lot of fun. I did that for a while. Family of Air Force. My dad was in that for a while, so we moved around a whole bunch. I started when I lived in Texas, which the middle school there had a marching band, which was wild and was good. It was a good time, but it was a pretty small program there. And then moving to like Indiana, where they had this huge marching program, a school of like 5,000 students. We did like all the national competitions and stuff. And I was only there for one semester, but we did like the Bands of America. We placed third in their like highest category for schools. And then we went on to like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Oh, cool.
And it was great. It was like, if I was going to be there for a semester, it was good that it was that semester.
Yeah.
But then we moved to Germany after that. And there was no marching program, and it was a much smaller school. But it was a good time because it was Germany, and it was fun to get to experience that and live over there. Got to play in like community bands, and I played in like as many bands as I could at the high school. And then after that, going to college for music education. I really enjoyed that. That was fun. Taught for a couple years of elementary school. Found out not my favorite age group. And very difficult, like midst of COVID, teaching in elementary school.
Yeah.
You see every day, you see like 150 kids. And it's just a lot of, I got COVID very early on, to no one's surprise. But yeah, so it was, I did that for a couple years, found that it wasn't my speed, and ended up here and have really enjoyed it so far.
Well, so do you think that having marching band in middle school helped you doing marching band later on?
Yeah, it was super fun. I mean, if I hadn't done it in middle school, I don't know if I would have gone directly into it in high school.
Yeah.
And the great thing too about marching band that's not even like necessarily related to like the musical aspect of like playing an instrument and performing it, since I was moving around so much, it made it so easy to be like, oh, I'm in marching band here. I can be in marching band there. I have friends already.
Yeah.
And that was great, and super helpful, because the first people that I met from my just very first semester of high school in Indiana after moving from Texas were like the people in the baritone section that I played in. And they were like amazing. They were friendly. And that was even before I had done anything else with the school. But getting to meet them was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was it like playing in the Thanksgiving Day Parade?
Very cold.
Was it?
We did the national anthem for Good Morning America before that.
Really?
So we like got on buses to go to their like we played outside of their studio, but we got on buses. We got there at like 3 a.m., did a sound check at like 3:30, and then slept on the buses for like 2 hours until we were ready to go. And then we like got out, got in uniform, played the national anthem. It was freezing cold. Then had to get out of that and then stage back to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade thing, and then do the whole long march while it was cold and freezing.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun though.
Did you get to see Santa?
No, I forget which floats we were behind. We could see the Snoopy was somewhere ahead of us. We could see that.
Yeah.
And then it's wild too. You do this whole like little show, song and dance thing in front of the Macy's building.
Yeah.
And we had to. It was so much smaller than the fields that we normally worked on.
Yeah.
That like for a couple months before it, we were just like practicing on this little tiny like square that we had taped off in the parking lot.
Wow.
It was cool.
So do you have it on video?
I haven't watched it in a long time,
You should see. I would like to see
I
it.
should, yeah. Yeah, it's it was a good time. I'm sure the video exists somewhere, but I have not seen it.
Oh.
It was I think it was 2011 Carmel, Indiana marching band.
If anybody wants to Google it, maybe we can find it.
It's probably there. There's some baritone wearing yellow gloves. Yeah.
All right, Jeremy, same to you. Your musical journey.
Oh yeah. So when I was 5 years old, I actually started playing the piano because my parents forced me to. So I did piano I played piano all the way up until 4th grade because in the Illinois public school area, at least in the Chicago area, they start band programs in 4th grade.
Wow.
So I got to try a couple instruments. I ultimately ended up picking trumpet because that's what my dad played. And I was like, I want to play trumpet like my dad. So for a while, I was playing trumpet and piano, and I didn't like practicing. So it was like my parents were like pulling teeth with practicing for me. So then I get through middle school. I had a lot of fun in band. I struggled early with trumpet, but then my parents found a private instructor for me, and then that's where my growth really accelerated to the point where I was playing in the 8th grade band as a 7th grader.
Wow.
So, and then by the time I got through 8th grade and was getting into high school, my parents came up to me and like, hey, I know you don't really like playing piano, and you're not really great at practicing trumpet, but and high school is going to be pretty busy, so we're going to give you the option if you want to stop playing piano and continue on with trumpet. So I took that opportunity. I regret it now, but at the time it worked out really nicely for me. And then in high school, I did anything that had a trumpet in it, I played in it. So it was concert band, jazz band, pit orchestra. There was show choir band as well, and full orchestra. So I was always busy. The only thing I didn't do was basketball pep band because I didn't want to. But
not a fan of basketball?
Yeah, pretty much. It was just kind of one of those things where I wasn't like I had fun at pep band at the football games because obviously there's a whole much better spirit, in my opinion, to it than basketball games. So plus I was busy with other things like jazz band and show choir band that basketball pep band seemed like too much.
Yeah. Crazy.
And then I during the summers too, I went to this summer camp called Birch Creek, and I did the jazz camp there. So it's a 2-week program where you live on the campus, and you basically for 2 weeks get to live like a professional musician. So you're playing 8 hours a day, you're doing concerts like every night, and it's just so much fun. So that's really where I was just like, I got to the point where like, I want to do this as a career type of thing. So I get to like my senior year of college, my parents are like, hey, like obviously they're not going to discourage like their child from wanting to do music, but their thing was maybe you should pick something else because you're not good at practicing. So which was a valid point. So I was like, all right, well, what else can I do that, is still heavily music involved, but allows me to continue with music. So that's how I found music education, because my mom was like, you're actually like a really good teacher without even trying. So I was like, well, maybe we'll give this a shot. So I went through college. I did music education for all the 4 years, as well as playing in all the ensembles there too. So always staying busy. So they had a jazz band, an orchestra, and a concert band. And I played in all three. So I was so rehearsals alone were 20 hours a week.
Wow.
And then I get through all of that. I'm really having fun. The on-site, like, I don't know what would you call that, Stephen? Where you go like, where you like you go and visit school visitations essentially. Yeah. So you go and like watch a teacher do their thing and kind of stuff, and then every once in a while they give you time where like, hey, you get a classroom to like kind of teach for yourself, and that was fun. And then I get to my student teaching, and I had a lot of fun. The kids were great. The program was great. And the biggest thing that I had a problem with was all that responsibility on a 21-year-old. Yeah. And that's kind of what it was. And then on top of that, thinking, I don't think I can do this for 42 years until 65. So that was kind of where I was just like, after college, I was like, maybe I should find something else to do. So I took a couple years off, worked at a restaurant to kind of find what I wanted to do. And then my mom comes to me sometime in 2019. Have you ever thought about instrument repair? no, I didn't even think that was like a possibility. And it's
Yeah.
funny too, because like, you take your instrument in to get cleaned, to get serviced and all that stuff. And then like, I never thought of it as a career. So then I kind of looked into schools and stuff like that. And there's like only 5 schools in the country that do it. I ended up going to the one closest to me because they had an apprenticeship style and I learned best one-on-one. So that's where I decided to go there
Yeah.
and learn instrument repair.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're working on spit valves
Absolutely.
until you hit 65.
Exactly. Or even later. I mean, I really enjoy it. So who knows if I'll retire at 65.
Yeah. So you moved here essentially
Mm-hmm.
from Chicago.
Yes.
So how do you like Colorado?
It's definitely different. I mean, I like it a lot, but one of the things that was a big shock to me was the extreme lack of trees.
A lack of trees.
Yeah, I mean, especially growing up in the part of Chicago that I did, there's this little area in Lisle called the Morton Arboretum, and it's a huge nature preserve of just trees.
Uh-huh.
So they have like trees, they have like over, 200,000 species of trees there.
Wow.
And you can like drive through it, and like they do like different things. Like for a while they had like a Lego exhibit of like different things.
Yeah.
And they have this one where they hired an artist from the Netherlands to like make these statues out of like twigs and stuff, and they're like the trolls.
Yeah.
So there's like I think
Oh,
there's like 12 or 13 trolls that
Wait,
are
is
just
it Isaac, or not Isaac Hardstone.
Yeah.
He's a Danish guy.
yeah.
'Cause
Okay.
There's
yeah.
one
Yeah.
in
There's one in
Breckenridge.
Breckenridge.
Okay, yeah, it's probably the same guy. Yeah, he did, and he did a couple in like the forests in like Denmark or the Netherlands or that area. But yeah, they contracted him. He built 13 trolls out of like sticks and stuff, and then he was kind of just like, yeah, when they fall down, they fall down. So there's not really a set time of how long they're going to be up there. It's just kind of whenever they fall down, he's not putting them back up. So
There's a story, the Isaac Hardstone troll that's in Breckenridge used to be in a different spot.
Yeah.
But like tourists and people of the town were like going to see it. It was like muddy and icy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they did actually have to move that one early. But I think the artist like fought it for a while.
Yeah.
But they eventually did it. But then he like is also a rapper. And so he released like a diss track to the government of like Breckenridge Village.
Right.
Or he's
like
it's
city council.
you need to listen to it. It's
crazy.
Oh, it's like the hook is like the government won't leave Isaac alone. But it's a whole diss track on the mayor. It's great.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's worth looking up.
Well, I
the trolls
gotta
are cool.
say, though, that is the first time I've ever heard that Colorado lacks trees.
I mean, it's not that there's no trees. It's just that there's significantly less trees than I'm used to, and also tumbleweeds.
Than in Chicago.
Well, and then with well, like I'm in the suburbs, so there's obviously going to be more trees and nature preserves and stuff like that.
sure.
Like 20 minutes from my house, there's a nature preserve where it's just wild grass. So like,
Wow.
I think
Crazy.
I
The
know
biggest difference too is like just the color. Like you get green stuff here, but it's not like the verdant.
it's not
Yeah.
green,
Yeah.
green,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean, but also another huge thing was seeing the sun all the time. I'm not used to. The Midwest, I may see the sun 180 or like half the year, so like 180 days. Here, I see it almost 300 days.
Yeah.
It's just that was something to get used to as well.
Yeah, it's a lot. So your vitamin D is up.
Yes,
It's like when
Yeah.
you like overcast days too. It's
especially when I can't remember if I was in Illinois or Wisconsin, but we set the record for the most consecutive days without sun. I think it was like 31 or 32 days of overcast,
Like, is everybody there crabby?
perfect.
pretty much. Like after a while, like after a week, you see people going crazy because we haven't seen the sun in like a week.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
imagine 3 more weeks of that.
Right. So, Stephen, tell me how you're doing from transitioning to a band teacher to working here at Music Depot.
Yeah. So going from like teaching to this, it's a very different like workflow, obviously. I towards the end of teaching, it was like panic attacks every morning
Yeah.
and like just the end of my rope a lot of the time. And for a variety of reasons. But it was not that, it just wasn't good. It wasn't fun. I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't feeling satisfied with the job.
Yeah.
And at that point it was like, okay, I even considered somewhere around December saying like, oh man, I need to I'm not digging it. Things are not going well.
Yeah.
I'm just really unhappy. But I stuck it out for the rest of the year. And I think that was like a good decision. Ultimately, it was really tough in that last semester, but the change in environment has been good. I really like.
Well, what else is he gonna say?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a big difference. I'm not, stressed out of my mind every single day, and that's a big plus.
Yeah.
And it's always tough too, like when like by December that you're gonna leave, and so then doing that whole next semester knowing you're gonna leave, but still trying to give the best to the kids is really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely deciding to stick it out for that whole second year was good. Ultimately, I definitely really enjoy working with my hands and like doing small meticulous things.
Yeah.
And that's really enjoyable. So that's been a fun aspect of it.
Yeah.
And getting to do that more consistently, because before it was like, oh, this is like the small part of my job that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Was like, figuring out how the xylophones are broken and putting nails back in them and restringing the bars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or like we had one quick like fun little project that we did where we were like 3D printing some recorders and like an ocarina and these little flutes. And that was a really fun, like tinkery sort of like thing to do as part of the job. And, it was an awesome part of it. I was like, okay, how can I do more stuff like this?
Well, it sounds like fun. Maybe we need a 3D printer.
They're pretty cool.
That might be.
There's a lot of band repair techs that now recently have gotten into 3D printing.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a great way to like make parts for stuff that like the manufacturers don't make anymore.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting.
One that came up recently was there was a guy on a Facebook page for band instrument repair who was looking for, there are these valve guides for constellation trumpets that are like, it's like a ring and then two posts coming down out of it. But like
those things are so dumb.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they're like, that's why they're not used anymore. That's why they don't hardly exist. But like if you have the ability to just make that part off of scans from, if you have 2 of the 3 that you need,
Yeah.
and then you can just scan it and then reproduce that part, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And like that way you don't have to rely on like, oh, there's a shop like 5 states away that might have one that I can talk to somebody online, and then maybe they ship it and it takes 2 weeks, and then.
Well, and I know sometimes we struggle finding parts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that tuba.
Yeah.
You had to make the valve guide. That was wild.
Right.
Okay, Jeremy,
Yes.
I want to know what your most memorable experience playing trumpet was.
My most memorable experience. There is one. I just can't remember what it is.
How about you, Stephen?
Well, I don't play trumpet. So
Well,
bass trombone is mostly what I play.
Yeah.
And I played euphonium and tuba and all the low brass and tenor trombone and all that jazz. But bass trombone's like, I started playing trombone in 7th grade, and then I went to high school, and then it was like, oh, I'm last chair, and my part says bass trombone on it. Hey, there's that old bass trombone in the back. Can I use that? And my band director was like, sure, yeah. I was like, oh man, I like playing low more than I like playing high. So it worked out.
good.
Being last chair is sometimes good. But jazz band is where I really enjoyed it. At UNC, because I went to the university here in Greeley.
Nice.
And they have a great set of like jazz bands. They call them lab bands. But they're so fun. That was easily the most fun ensemble that I played in while I was at UNC, and probably like any of the other ensembles I played in. The most memorable, we did a like Battle of the Big Bands concert sometime my like junior year.
Yeah.
And it was great because we had, there used to be 5 lab bands. I think now there's only 3. But like lab 1, I was always in lab 2 because there was always a doctoral student in lab 1 or a master's student in lab 1. But we set up both big bands on the stage, just like separated. The 2 directors of the bands came out like wearing boxing gloves and boxing things.
Oh, cool.
At the start of the concert. And like we'd switch off playing tunes. And then at the end of it, we played a tune together that was like with a click track, and it was 2 bands, and there was a video of like a guy behind it. It's from an old movie. He was like smoking a cigar, like sitting in this office chair, and like his movements were related to the music. And it was just so like the production was so cool. But that's probably the most memorable. Because it was so cool to see videos of it later and hear recordings of it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, jazz bands are very fun.
Yeah.
And that's probably the coolest.
That's awesome.
I remembered mine.
Oh, good.
So my freshman year of college, Jimmy Kimmel came to our campus for to do
Wow.
like a guest talk.
Yeah.
And he specifically requested that a band be played, because he has his band play him on his night show.
Yeah.
So I got to be a trumpet player to help play him on for his thing, and we got to play. He specifically requested Huey Lewis in the News because he loves Huey Lewis, but.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I got to play him on for our guest talk show for that. So that was really, really cool.
So how much notice did you get before that you had to learn Huey Lewis in the News before performing it?
Probably a week. We probably only had like two or three rehearsals and then put it together. I mean,
And it was good?
Yeah, it worked out really well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because our professor, our jazz professor, he was brand new that year, Dr. Snyder. He's a fantastic organ player, so he was able to write out all the parts and everything, and then we just
Cool.
kind of put it together. So it was really fun.
That's awesome. And that video is probably online as well.
I'm sure it's somewhere. Yeah, I don't know where DePauw University would have that buried, but I'm assuming it's somewhere,
Yeah. That would be fun to watch too.
right?
Jeremy Little.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember the joke he made after that. He's just like, he thanked the band, and he's just like, for those of you who don't know, that was Huey Lewis in the News. For those of you that are 80 years old,
Right.
It's a good one.
Okay, so let's talk about your most memorable repairs so far. Now, I know you guys haven't been here as long as Kyra because she's got like a list. She's got
Oh,
like
yeah.
a jar of miscellaneous items. But do you guys have memorable repairs at this point?
For me, are we talking from repair school, or are we talking from the shop?
Anything you want to talk about?
Well, the most memorable one I had was just recently, actually, when I fixed up one of the teachers in the areas at Prairie Heights Middle School. I fixed up her French horn, so it had a lot of dent work from the bell was just kind of smashed in from kids smacking into it for 28 years or so, and then doing the dent work on that and then polishing up the bell to make it look real shiny. It was really
It's
cool.
satisfying.
And then only then to realize that her French horn's worth like $7,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No pressure there.
Exactly, right? Well, it's a good thing I realized after I was done with it as opposed to before I started working on it.
Right. Because then you would have been so nervous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it was not worth $7,000 in the state that it was in before you.
Probably
worked on
not,
it.
That's
no.
true.
That would be I'm sure we can pull up a photo of the before and after because you took some pretty good.
Yeah,
shots,
I
'cause
did.
It's good.
Yeah.
That one of the few that I actually remember to take before and afters of.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then my favorite from repair school was I helped tear down, what was it? Oh, it was a Selmer Mark VI Barry sax.
Mm-hmm.
And so we at the shop, they do full overhauls exclusively. So it was, taking all the keys off, getting them polished, and then taking the old lacquer off, stripping the old lacquer off, getting them re-lacquered and all of that. And so we're restoring a $9,000 instrument from the,
Wow.
60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Well, and the Selmer Mark Sixes have all the history too.
They
all
do.
the most popular Barry sax players from the big bands like Ronnie Cuber.
Mhm.
Who's the other one I'm thinking of? Pepper Adams, Pepper something.
I'm not sure, honestly.
Yeah, I think it might be Pepper Adams. Pepper's in the name somehow, but
Mhm.
they played on Selmer Mark Sixes from what I
Wow.
understand. But
And it's just so funny too, because you look at the Mark V and the Mark VII are just not that great
Yeah.
compared to the Mark VI. So I don't know what they did, but they're. And the hard part about that horn too was it sat in a garage for I don't know 20, 30 years in Hawaii,
Wow.
and so the salt water humidity just ate those rods. They were so
Yeah.
rusted we had to just pull posts off just to be able to get keys off.
Wow. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And then so the keys were the rods were so pitted, I actually had to make 3 new rods that were probably about 2 feet in length.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
those are so obnoxious.
I know. Classic Selmer to make rods just so unnecessarily big.
Yeah.
What about you, Stephen?
So in contrast to Kyra and Jeremy, I never went to repair school.
Right.
So I've only been strictly repairing instruments at any place that repairs instruments for 3 months.
Right.
So not quite as big of a backlog. But the cello with so we like somebody brings a cello in and it's like, oh, my son, something was going wrong with it.
It's
like high school
rattling.
age. Yeah, it's rattling. And it's like that usually shouldn't happen. And so like the first thing you think is like, oh, okay, the sound post is probably knocked over a little bit that goes between the back plate, the face plate. That helps the instrument resonate and all that. And that's usual. Like those fall down enough.
Yeah.
Then you kind of rattle around, look in there. It's like, no, it's still up. It's like, okay, what's shaking around here? So you have to kind of like, you can only look into the tiny little holes on the front of it. And just shaking it around, trying to catch a glance of whatever's rattling around. And it's like a little orange fish comes into frame. And so there were 2 little goldfish in there that were rattling around. And then I think, because she was in there, her son wasn't there. But I looked over and was like, guaranteed one of his friends from orchestra put goldfish in his instrument for fun.
Right.
And I think she called him at some point, and that was the exact story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the funniest part to me. She called him. She's like, "Did you know there were a couple goldfish in there?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I knew that."
Well, I never thought about using an orchestra instrument to, save your snacks for later.
I have seen a double bass turned into like a mini fridge,
Oh, creative,
which pretty cool.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should get one for the shop.
I know.
Well, we already have the amp fridges.
So did you eat the
pretty good.
goldfish?
No,
or-
they sit in a little jar.
Oh, you got your own
So
jar
you're starting
started.
a jar of like random
Alright.
things you find in instruments.
Right?
There was another girl who came in the other day that had a tenor sax, and she was like, all right, the tenor sax, it's like broken, like it's something's leaking at the top of it, and I don't know where my mouthpiece is. And so we were just like, okay, we can like find you a mouthpiece, or we have some that are in stock that you can look at and you can like play test or whatever. And then like while she's doing that, I like take the tenor sax over to Jeremy's bench, who has the leak light,
Yeah.
to like put it down in there. And I just put it down about 3 inches, and then and then just look in the bell of the tenor, like, hey, I found your mouthpiece.
It was in there?
Yeah, I don't know how, but
Wow.
2 birds, 1 stone. It worked out.
Yeah. Easy repair too,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
and it was also, there was stuff broken on it.
Should we talk about the quality of the instruments that you guys repair?
I mean, the biggest thing is you just want to make sure that it's a name brand. So you're looking for like Bach, Kahn, Selmer, Yamaha. Those are the big ones I can think of right now. But essentially something that like you can go online and order spare parts for. So something like, like your Amazon brands, like your Mendini, Cecilio, Lazaro, Alora,
Yeah.
things like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're a great deal because, they're like $100 for an instrument. And for someone that doesn't know better, that sounds like a great deal. But the biggest issue is that we can't get aftermarket parts for it. And because the metal is so thin and cheap, it just makes it impossible to do really anything with it.
Right.
Because like there was the clarinet that we got in from a local school that needed some adjustments and needed some of the keys to be actually adjusted on the clarinet. And on an instrument where it's made of a cast metal that is more, well cast, or more, it's a more dense metal, it's attached more securely, and which, obviously takes time and costs more money, so the instrument's more expensive.
Right.
But if it gets bent by an errant knock from somebody walking by it, then you can bend it back and you're not worried about it snapping off.
Yeah.
But with this one, it was just a small bend, and like the second you start going at it, it just and pulls apart.
Yeah.
And then the way to fix that is silver soldering, and which requires a really high temperature. And that metal that they use to make the key is not going to withstand that high temperature
Right.
of silver solder. So fixing it is, you might make it worse. It might work, but
Yeah.
Because it's essentially the same material that we use for the silver solders. So as you're silver soldering, you're melting what you're
melting it.
trying to put together.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we got into a issue with a green saxophone that somebody had brought in for a repair, and we stand behind our repairs, so this saxophone kept coming in and coming in and coming in, and we just could not
Fix it.
fix it and make it sound like it should.
Yeah.
But that's why the majority of music instruments shops like ours, have rent to own programs where it's more affordable.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult when you're, 6th grader wants to play saxophone. How do you afford that?
Right.
And so that's why we offer the programs that we do,
right.
and the repair services as well.
Right. Yeah. My biggest thing too is if I mean, for just anyone looking for a band instrument that just knows nothing, just go to your local music shop. They'd be happy to answer any of your questions and make sure to lead you in the right path, because there's nothing worse than finding out that that instrument you bought is a complete waste of money, because no one likes wasting money.
No, and I'm sure a lot of parents, parents who are not musicians aren't going to know. In fact, my husband and I were talking about it the other day, because he's not musical and he wouldn't know. He would be looking for the best deal.
Sure, yeah.
But that doesn't do your student any favors either.
Exactly.
And there are some companies that have gone like to more lengths to make those more affordable. I know that there's Wessex, which is it's a Chinese manufactured brand, but I think their company is based out of the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Their kind of approach is to take the instruments that they get, and I think they vet them. They have their own like development of instruments and like manufacturing stuff, but they're taking some steps to try and I believe their instruments are still manufactured in China, in large factories where other companies have their instruments manufactured too, or other brands like Mendini's, Siciliano, and all those. But they're trying to take that a step further and trying to like produce some more quality out of that. So there's like some middle grounds with things like that. That I'd say like the most important thing is that you can get spare parts for it, and there's an infrastructure to get those parts.
Right.
Because if there's not, then there's no recourse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and in handling the ordering for the store, what I've noticed, it seems like we're getting waves of things that we can't get in. Like at the moment, we're back ordered on cello bridges, which is, a pain right now.
Yes.
And drums, because of the thing going on with aluminum.
Yeah.
The drum and bell
The
kits.
bell kits.
Yeah, the drum and bell kits are.
And then the flutes and clarinets because of
Silver.
the silver shortage.
Yeah, it's funny that we're still, and it all goes back to the pandemic.
I know.
It really does.
Like,
Yeah.
it just messed up everything.
Rough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jeremy, you have a love of Pokemon,
I sure do.
right?
Yeah.
So Tyler ran into you
Uh-huh.
downtown,
Yeah.
wandering.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely not the first time.
So if we can't find you, we have to head downtown because you're hunting Pokemon.
Pretty much, yeah.
You hunt them?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's Pokemon Go, so it's that online app where you kind of go around the world and just walk around to try and find them. So
Yeah.
there's certain days where like you can do raids. So like I'm in, I don't know, 3 group chats at this point for like coordinating raids with people. So I've got
That sounds really like.
it is, yeah. And then like and then
So
and then I've
organized.
got a whole bunch of friends too that like our friendship is predicated on Pokemon Go because that's how we met.
Really?
So like we'll text and be like, "Hey, I've got this raid. You want to go do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just send me an invite." So, but yeah, I'm in a group chat for an Illinois group chat, so for the Chicago area. Then I'm in a group chat for Wisconsin, where I went to school out there, and then I'm in a group chat now for Greeley too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and you were going to make us. What were you going to make us? A Pokemon stop.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of making a Pokestop. So like when you reach
Pokestop.
when you
Oh,
reach
yeah,
a
yeah,
certain
yeah.
level, you have the ability to influence where new Pokemon stops get made, and it's a lot of it's based on, like if there's a historical impact, if it's a place where, people gather and like hang out, or if it's just like unique to the area. And so I'm like, well, we fit those last two. It's a music store is obviously a great place to, hang out and communicate with people, but it's also unique in that we're the only music store in Greeley. So
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, and Pellegrini's, the Italian restaurant across the street, has one.
they
Really?
do. Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
That's awesome. Well, so are we not going to get one because of proximity then? There's one too close?
Well, so the process is a little lengthy in that, like, I have to recommend it, but then people also have to be like, yeah, that's a good spot for that. So we're kind of in that limbo right now where not enough people have approved it to become a Pokestop.
Can you get on your group chats and be like, hey,
Right?
Oh, probably, yeah.
get over here?
But it would have to be for the one that's here because it's
Yeah.
based on the area that you're from. So my
Right.
group chat from Illinois or
Yeah.
Wisconsin's probably not going to be able to help as much
Yeah.
because their recommendations are catered towards that area that they're in.
Right. Well, we'll have to figure that out.
It's a cool game. It's fun. I played it like at the very start and then didn't play it at all.
Yeah.
But then my partner's super into it. And
Yeah.
she was like, hey, you need to send me a gift on this app. And I was like, oh, all right, it's fun.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah.
That makes shopping easy.
But it's like a fun if you're just walking around town or whatever, and there's a couple Pokestops.
Yeah.
It's a good time. Like it's passive enough, and you
That's
don't really
awesome.
have to spend money on it.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like for the most part, a lot of us here are video game
Mm-hmm.
people. You know, my husband and I play a lot of Switch.
Yeah, you play
lot of
what
Mario
Mario Kart
Kart.
and Mario Golf, that
Mario
kind of
Golf.
thing.
We play pool.
Do you see there's the new DLC coming out in Christmas for Mario Kart?
No.
Or
Yeah,
tracks.
they just announced 2 tracks for it. So
Oh,
I-
Well, you're gonna
tracks.
have to let me know when it happens.
yeah,
This time.
yeah, I'll make sure to let you know this time.
Worked together 8 hours, and he never told me that the new tracks were ready.
Yeah, and well, you forgot the worst offense of that. I went home on lunch break and,
And
played.
played.
Yes,
And didn't come back and tell me.
exactly.
Oh, I was so mad. I was so mad.
It's just so he can master the tracks before you get a chance.
Well, yeah,
Right.
I mean, I already got the 3-star ranking on all of them from 50 to 200.
tracks.
So
Which is ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah. I haven't been able to do that.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. Yeah.
I have
The
decided,
AI
though.
is not fair.
I've been playing as Wiggler on the Mario Golf, and I have decided that that is my spirit animal.
Wiggler.
Yeah. Have
Oh,
you
yeah.
seen
Collection
his?
of orange
The big
balls.
wiggly caterpillar thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you know, he's got a flower on his head, and he's so happy and so sweet, and
those
he's
nice
got a
little
big
shoes.
butt, right? So he's just like me. But then, have you seen his power shot? Like he is so
Yeah.
mad.
No.
My favorite is
Does he
when he
get
gets
angry?
when he gets angry because then he
Yes.
turns all red and he gets super fast and
Oh.
aggressive.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then he has these little
Mhm.
steam poofs coming out
Oh,
of his
yeah,
head,
yeah.
right? Totally me.
I think
It's my spirit animal,
when
definitely.
I run into him in that one Mario Kart track that has Wiggler in it, yeah,
Yeah.
it gets angry.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Which one- was that in Mario Kart Wii?
Yeah, it's the foresty one where you're like going up
Oh,
the tree
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
I heard rumors that that's actually going to be remade for the Mario Kart 8 DLC.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
What,
That's a good one.
Maple Tree Ray, wasn't it?
I have no idea.
I think that sounds right to me.
When what's the Mario game where you play on the game board?
Mario Party.
Mario Party. He's in there where you have to pet him and not wake him
Oh
up.
yeah. Oh, dude,
Same.
Mario Party is a friendship ender. Let me tell you.
It's
Yeah. I mean, we're still married. We've played quite a bit. We're still married, but I agree.
it's the
Like-
monopoly of our time.
I know.
It really is.
When I yell at my husband to row, because we do the boat one,
Oh,
down the river, and I'm like,
yeah.
row!
Yep. Those mini games.
Oh
are
yeah.
cool.
Paddle, paddle, paddle.
my favorite are the 1v3 where you're the
Yes.
one person
Yeah.
taking out the other 3.
A little frustrating, though.
I think there's the paintball one where you like have to shoot them off the course and
Yep.
everything. There's nothing
Yeah.
more
There's, like, the
satisfying than
Hungry
knocking them
Hungry
off the
Hippos.
edge. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Hungry Hippo
Oh,
style
yeah,
one
yeah,
where it's
yeah.
like all 4 of you against.
Mhm.
That one, I found that those are the worst ones because
Oh, where it's a free for all.
yeah, those really.
Well,
those
yeah, those are
really
definitely the
grind.
worst ones, but my favorite are
Gears.
personally the 1v3s. So,
Yeah, no, I get it.
When they have the one where you flip the cards and you have to pick the,
oh, where you have to
and
match the
they spin
pairs.
them. Yeah.
Yep.
That one's always hard.
Or there's the one where like the red, like 3 red Koopa Troopas, 2 apples, a pineapple, and something else
and you
flies
have to
by.
get-
Oh, you have to remember
what's
which one
going
was.
on.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
But it's
Yeah.
fun because you can, if you're playing with friends and you want to like get them out early, you're like, oh, it's this one, and then at the last minute you run to the right one. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can get them.
When I find it unusual that, well, not unusual, but a lot of times when you come walking in here, there's always video game music playing in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah, we're over on the band side recently. We've been really into like film score music.
Really?
Played
Yeah.
a lot of John Williams the other day.
Yeah, I think we played
Nice.
John
That's good.
Williams all day on Saturday.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
and it was the game of is this Superman? Is it Indiana Jones?
Oh yeah, we like to mess with Kyra because when she listens to it, she can tell the difference between Superman and Indiana Jones. But if you tell her, she gets confused. So
Really?
now it's like my personal mission to mess with her every time on that.
So you tell her like in the first
Oh yeah,
bars
so,
or what?
So yeah, like Indiana Jones will start playing. I'm like, oh yeah, it's Superman, and then she'll like look at me and she'll like glare at me.
Well, and then I guess I understand now that if anything is of John Williams, is if Jeremy's like, I don't know what this is from. It's usually E.T.
Yep, it's
Really?
every
Just
time. Yeah,
can't
I
get
can't.
E.T. in your
For some
brain.
reason, I can't place ET.
Have you seen E.T.?
A long time ago. Yeah.
Just once.
Yes.
Well, that would explain it,
Probably. Yeah.
you know. Well, so how are we doing? What else do we need to discuss?
Steven's race car.
Steven's race car. I
The
forgot
real-life
about
Mario Kart.
Steven's race car.
So yeah, so it's a series called 24 Hours of Lemons. It's a endurance racing series. So like most of the races are 2 days of 8-hour events, but some of the races are full 24-hour long races where you go from noon on Saturday to noon on Sunday. And this series is great. It's a play on the old racing series called the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is like I forget where it is. It's in Europe. But
Isn't it usually in France?
Yeah, I believe it's French. Yeah. With a name like Le Mans.
Yeah.
How could it not? But it's a play on that, and the whole deal is that it's for these awful cars. The stipulation is that you spend $500 on your car and
Right.
anything to make it go fast.
Right.
So like if you just find a shell of a car and then find like a junky engine from a friend for like $200, then okay, that's like maybe you got the car for free. So it's like there's $200. Then you spend another like 100 on some junky turbocharger that you got off of like a junkyard car from Mexico or something like that.
Yeah.
And just cobbling it together and then using whatever else of that couple budget that you have. Usually you don't get the car for free, so maybe that's like the other 200 part of the budget.
Yeah.
And then cobbling that together as a car that will hopefully survive for 24 hours.
Right. And go fast.
Yeah. And then, it's more expensive than 500 because you have to have a roll cage.
Yeah.
You have like all these fire suppression like systems in the car,
Yeah.
and you have a full fireproof suit,
Right.
a Hans device, which keeps your neck from wiggling around too much in a crash and getting hurt.
Yeah.
Full helmet, full racing seat, 5-point harness,
Yeah.
all that jazz. So it's like, it's that aspect of it felt pretty good racing in it because, it's safe.
Yeah.
As safe as you can be. But the cars are just hilarious. Like the stuff that you see on the track is gold. Like
Yeah.
there's some just absolute nonsense. There was a team that was racing this year because I've only done it for the 2 years. Had a blast doing it both years. But there was one team that was racing last year and this year called, and they all have goofy team names. It was just my sister's college car was the team. And it was just like their sister's college car that she had not needed anymore after college because she got a new one. And they were just like, nah, all right, I can get this for free. Let's just turn it into a race car.
Yeah.
And so like stripping everything out, it was like bright pink with the little eyelashes over
Oh,
the,
that's
the
cute.
headlights. And they did great. It was super cool.
Yeah.
But the kinds of things that you see, like just looking up any of the videos of the cars that they have there are
Yeah.
awesome.
You should,
Well, tell us
you
about
should-
your car.
I will, yeah.
Tell us about your car, but first tell us about the guys that committed to the Italian bid.
Oh my God. Okay. Speaking of teams, they're so like Scuderia Ferrari is like a very sorry, that was not intentional, but it's gonna come back later. They are like a fabled racing team, Ferraris, all that jazz. But this team, because in the F1 season right now, they're not doing so well, and
Yeah.
they're doing well. They're like in second place, but they've made some blunders that are pretty. They're making some mistakes.
Yeah.
And so this team was like, okay, we're gonna capitalize on that.
Yeah.
So they came in and they called their team Charcuteria Ferrari.
Oh, very nice.
I think they added like limoncello onto the end of it, and so like they're going around the team principal of the F1 team is like his last name is Bonato, and so they got all their last names to be Bonato on their little racing thing,
Right.
on their racing seats and on their car. They have all their names listed, but they would go around the paddock, which is like where all the cars are parked. While they're either being worked on during the race or before and after the race.
Yeah.
And they just had like this, I think they had a radiator from a car and they had the charcuterie board set out a path around it. And they're just walking around like, Ferrari #1 and all that.
Right.
And then they had like this yellow Gatorade that they were calling limoncello because you can't drink on the race.
Well,
track,
obviously. Yeah.
But gold.
Yeah.
They had a lot of fun with it, and it was great. And it was just they committed to the bit so much, and that's part of the fun of it. Like it's not super competitive, but it's very much for the atmosphere of it.
Yeah.
Didn't you say they were like sprinkling Parmesan on cars
Yes.
and stuff like that too?
Yeah, they had little Parmesan things that they would sprinkle on cars when they were going by, and then like they had wet pasta that they would throw at people. It was a whole thing, but they nailed it. They had a good time. For our cars, so last year was the first race I did, and that race I like a couple months before the event was like, hey, like I want to come watch this just because I was interested in getting in, but like I didn't know anybody in the sport, so I was like, all right, if I watch it, maybe I'll meet some people and figure out what it's about. And I posted onto one of their Facebook pages of like, hey, like where's a good place to camp? Like, can I camp at the racetrack? Would that be good? And I get a response from that. I was like, hey, I know you want to camp, but like we have a spot on our team. Like, and you do arrive and drives where you'll like, pay the team to help cover their entrance fee and like gas and the car and things like that. And they were like, hey, like, do you want to come and race? And I was like, well, I'm going to be there. It's a 2-hour drive to get out to the track.
Yeah.
So, like, why not?
Yeah.
And so in the month, I like went and helped them work on their car and like got a fire suit and other things like that. It was
Sure.
a blast. But then like 2 weeks before the race, the car started knocking and the engine just went kaput, which we just fixed it this past year.
Yeah.
But that car also didn't race it this last year for
Yeah.
other reasons. But that didn't work out. But there was a great team that we were able to rent a car from them and still got to race, got to have a lot of fun. That team that let us rent their car, they had like a nice other car, and they were like, "Oh, this is just our parts car. Like, you guys can just use that. It's probably not going to last. It's not going to be super fast, but you know,
Yeah.
it'll do you fine for the race."
Right.
And so we get like 4 hours, 5 hours into the race, like 5 p.m. on Saturday, and their like nice race car that they have, the transmission just like explodes
Oh, jeez.
halfway through the race, and they can't race it.
And
And so we're racing their ratty parts car.
Oh, no.
Oh, and
It's still going
It's still
fine.
going.
Yeah. And when I say fine, I mean, you know, fine.
It was still moving.
When you shifted into third gear, it wouldn't stay there. So as long as you were in third gear, you had to have a hand on the shifter holding it
Hold it
into
in
third
Oh,
gear.
no.
And so you'd like going through a corner, like trying to hold it in there, while also trying to brake and
Right.
turn and accelerate out
There's
of
a
it.
lot going on.
And it was a blast. It was so fun. And it worked great until like 5 a.m. of
Yeah.
the day after. So like 12 hours after we had, and their team like kind of joined in and raced in our car a little bit. It's a communal thing.
Sure.
And sometime around 5 a.m., I was asleep getting ready for another shift of driving.
Yeah.
And two of the lug nuts on the front left tire sheared around a corner.
Oh, no.
And so the wheel didn't fall off, but it clunked around for a lap. And then we didn't have the tools to replace the wheel bearings. So
Oh,
it was out for the race. But it was still a lot of fun.
sure.
This past year, we raced a Toyota MR2, which it was from 1986. It's a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, super fun to drive. Not terribly fast,
Yeah.
but very fun to drive. So we raced that this past year. That one made it all 24 hours.
That's
It's
awesome.
pretty cool. We had to replace the clutch fluid. We had to replace some brakes. And we had to tie the battery down with some zip ties.
Nice.
And
Always come in handy.
yeah,
in a pinch.
yeah. Most of that car was held together with zip ties, it seemed. But it did great, and we finished. And that's a goal in and of its own. I think out of
Nice.
67 cars, we were like 47th.
Yeah.
So not winning any speed competitions, but we finished, which was pretty cool.
Also, camping is always better at the racetrack.
If you have earplugs.
Not even then. I
fair.
have fun without them.
Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah.
It was when I was camping there, like there was one car that would always go around turn one that would backfire every time it
Oh, geez.
decelerated for turn one.
Pow, pow.
So I was like watching my watch, like, oh, wow, that was a 2.5 minute lap. That was faster.
Yeah.
Cool, nice. They're improving.
All right. Are you going to have a post-recorded, pre-recorded exit? No. Okay, so thank you for joining us. This is the crew at Music Depot signing off.
There you go.
Are we good?
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
All right. Running out of things to talk about that are